Chapter 6. The Parting of Ways. Harry could hear the roar of the crowd, but he would not let it distract him from his comfort. It appeared the crystal had gotten brighter. Harry was not alone, something he was not aware of until he was disturbed by the words. "It's beautiful." Harry glanced sideways quickly, just enough to identify who it was that was being so rude as to disturb his pleasure, then returned his stare back to the crystal. He recognized Tim and positioned his body to prevent him from sharing in the reflections. Tim again repeated himself. "It's beautiful." "Look, Tim," Harry responded without bothering to look into the direction the sentence was heading. "Can't you see that I'm busy? Did I disturb you when you were enjoying your crystal?" Tim was taken aback by the rebuff, but remained and disturbed Harry further. "Please, oh please, would you just let me share it with you for a moment?" he asked. Harry ignored the comment. "I won't bother you for long," said Tim. Harry remained silent. Then out of Tim's mouth came the question that finally drew Harry from the embrace of the reflections the crystal was projecting. "Where did you get it? It's beautiful." "I am sure you know where I got the crystal and the great risks that I had to take." Harry, at this point in the conversation, turned to look for a reaction on Tim's face. Tim was not daft. He had more crystals than any caterpillars his age, including the large crystal he had traded with John. He was a very smooth talker when he had to be. Not only could he talk, he was very perceptive about other people's moods. He could walk the walk, they would say. He realized that if he wanted to go further with his pursuit of looking into the crystal, he had better put Harry at ease now that he had his attention. "Oh, yes, I'm aware of what people have been saying, but I wanted to hear it from your mouth," Tim said. "I am sure that some of those comments I have heard were just jealousy. I know how careful you are, something that I respect dearly in you. But selfish? No." "Did you say that someone insinuated that I was selfish?" Harry quickly responded. "They must know how selfless it was of me to go and save John." Tim was getting Harry where he wanted him and made his next move. "Well, they say that you took the crystal without asking John," Tim said, "and that you have not once been to see how he is. I realize that you have been busy and that you are perfectly aware that John had recovered from the sleep only a short while ago." "That's correct, Tim. You are absolutely correct. I have every intention of taking the crystal to John as soon as he is well enough, and all those other caterpillars go away and leave poor John alone for a while," he said in his defense. To show how generous he was, and because he thought he might be short of friends, he turned to Tim and invited him to join him in staring at the crystal. Tim readily took Harry up on his generous offer. They lay beside each other, sharing their reflections. Tim would confirm how beautiful the crystal was and how kind it was of Harry to let him be part of this. At the same time, he was hoping that some of the younger caterpillars would see him. Harry was trying to relax, but he was concerned about Tim's comments. "See, I'm not selfish. I'm sharing with you. How stupid some can be," as Harry was hoping that others would see him as well. He could use this in his defense, he thought as he planned his next move. The admiration for John was clear by the reaction of the group. They surged forward, crowding John once he finished the telling. They were trying to touch the cloak as if it possessed some special powers of its own. Charlie was watching and becoming very concerned. He eventually decided that John was getting tired of the questions and pestering. "Come on, get back. It's time for you all to go. Be gone," Charlie said. The group thinned, and only a few of the stragglers required more encouragement from Charlie before they left. When they were alone, Charlie congratulated John on his fine performance. "Couldn't have done it better myself," he said. John grinned, clearly tired, and said how much he enjoyed the telling. Charlie told him he obviously had a gift for it, and that he would get better at it the older he got. Charlie then turned to John and said, Come on, son, lay here. You need some rest," gesturing for John to lie in front of Charlie's crystals. John was surprised and pleased that Charlie called him son. He made himself comfortable in front of the crystals as he had never done before, and Charlie joined him. They both lay looking at the reflections and sharing the beauty of it. "Look at that one, John. It's almost the deepest blue you can imagine," Charlie would say, indicating to a part of the crystal glowing bright blue. It was like two friends watching a campfire and commenting on the colors of the flames, happy and content. Harry decided it was time to go and see John. He could not rest. He was not concerned too much about John. It was Charlie he was worried about. Before long, he said to Tim, "I'd better go and see how John is, and at the same time I will take the crystal to him. Would you mind giving me a hand?" "With pleasure," said Tim, expecting to be able to actually touch this amazing crystal. "Oh, that's so kind of you," said Harry. Tim approached the crystal and started to place his hand around it. "No!" said Harry. "I will carry that. What I would like you to do is bring those items that I think John might be willing to trade for the crystal." "It's a pile of junk," complained Tim. "Beauty, my boy, is in the eye of the beholder. Who are we to judge what John might consider valuable or useful?" Harry said. "So I would appreciate it if you would just bring it. I will carry the crystal," said Harry. Tim gathered the items together for Harry, but was mumbling still that it was all trash. "John might be stupid," he said, "but he is not that daft." "Come, my little beauty," Harry said as he bent down and lifted the crystal. Charlie could see in his crystals the imperfection growing, and he knew it was Harry. He could see this time he had someone else with him. The closer they got, the angrier Charlie became. Finally, Harry arrived. "Oh, you look so much better, John, than the last time I saw you," Harry whistled. Before John could respond to Harry's comments, Charlie stepped forward, halting Harry in his tracks. "Finally, you've decided to come and see how John is?" he exclaimed. Harry tried to speak, but Charlie continued forcefully enough that Harry considered it was best that he remain quiet. "In all my time," Charlie began, "I have never seen such an act of selfishness and lack of caring. John could have died for all you knew. Your only concern was the crystal." He grew closer to Harry, who was backing up so fast he reversed into Tim, who could do nothing because he was loaded down with the things that Harry hoped to swap for the crystal. Fat chance, Harry thought as he looked back at what he had backed into. He placed the crystal on the ground and turned to Tim, at the same time giving him a look that indicated it was time to go. "Friendship and concern? None. You, Harry, have turned into a selfish, old caterpillar. Yes, you can get comfort from your crystals, but at the end of the day, it will be the love of your fellow caterpillars that you will be measured by, not how many crystals you've collected or stolen," Charlie continued. Harry was shocked by the accusation of theft and was going to defend his reputation but thought better of it. Charlie continued towards him, and the last words that were ever spoken between Harry and Charlie were, "Be gone! Don't you ever let your shadow or reflection cast upon my crystals. We are finished. Go!" Harry skulked backwards and walked away from his old friend. He left the crystal and never even got a chance to go over why he had not come to see him earlier. He instructed Tim to follow as he retreated. The best course of action, he thought. "We had better give them a little bit of time to get over it," he said to Tim. Inside, he knew that he would not see Charlie anymore. This was something that would cause him much unrest. It was as if the words that Charlie had spoken removed the ability to truly relax. No more could he get the same level of pleasure he had in the past. He would almost get there, but then he would always think of the loss of Charlie as a friend and the guilt of what caused it. This would plague Harry, and it could be seen in his face in the short time he had left before the change. Charlie placed the returned crystal near his pile, and then this became known as John's patch. Many of the caterpillars would come by just to look at the beauty of it. As time passed, John again started to travel. Small journeys at first, but they got bigger every time. Before he would leave, he would always say goodbye to Charlie and tell him what his plans were. On his return, he would immediately report to Charlie first. The amazing rescue had taken a lot out of Charlie. The task of carrying John by himself was enormous for a caterpillar of his age. It was not long before John could see the desire to change come over Charlie. He stopped eating again and spent many hours just looking at the crystals. On the particular day of Charlie's change, John had left out early. Charlie seemed comfortable and content as John informed him that he would not be gone long, as he did not want Charlie to be worried. He walked quickly around the compound, and as he passed Charlie's place, he looked to make sure he was okay. There he was, still in the same place, contentedly staring at the reflections. Charlie now felt the time had come. Much as the many adventures that he had been on in his life as a caterpillar, the thought of the change did not scare or bother him. It was a journey he was ready to take. His skin was almost bursting with its swollen size, and now the time had come. As with any journey, he would rely on past experience to guide him forward. He knew inside he had been sincere in his actions and beliefs all his life. Charlie left for the lower leaf. The journey was short and the path well trodden. He would miss those he loved, but he could not resist the change, nor did he want to. By the time John got back from the next lap, Charlie was gone. The thought of not seeing Charlie again saddened John. He returned to his crystal, and although he was not into staring as much as the other caterpillars, that was all he felt like doing. He stared and remembered the great friend that Charlie had been. He even laughed and then cried at some of the things Charlie had done. The reflections gave him time to think and reflect. He would miss his dear and loyal friend. The change was now starting to worry others in the community. Harry was rapidly approaching the change and was not happy at the thought of it. He was heard offering crystals to anyone that would come up with something that would stop the onset of the change. It was rumored that Tim had talked Harry out of quite a considerable amount of crystals as a down payment for a cure he was supposed to be working on. He called them developmental costs. Harry was bursting at the seams when he finally left for the lower leaf. The thought of the lower leaf scared him some, but he could not wait any longer for the cure that did not come. The change was upon him. He started to leave his patch slowly and reluctantly, glancing back for signs of Tim to come and save him from this nightmare. With each inch traveled, he reflected upon the crystals that he had given Tim and felt stupid. Development cost or not, there was no stopping the change. Harry would, and did, disappear like the rest of them. Chapter 7. The Journey. Although John was learning to enjoy the reflections since his dear friend Charlie had gone to the lower leaf in the change, the desire to travel was greater than the feeling of comfort. He started to pack just as carefully as he had in the past. This time, however, he decided to wear a stick on his side, much as a knight would wear a sword. He thought it might come in handy in case he should happen upon the dreadful belladonna, or something similar. As he set off, he looked very noble indeed. The cloak shimmered and his body was firm and healthy. The sword obviously was a nice touch in looks and practicality. As he set off, he bumped into Tim. "Hello, John," said Tim. "Where are you off to?" It was obvious to Tim that John was about to leave on some epic journey, and he would go with him if given the opportunity. "I'm going to the edge," John said politely. "Do you think it would be wise to go alone?" Tim said. "Wise? No. To travel to the edge by yourself is very dangerous. Can you come with me?" "No," replied John. John was able to preempt the next question that Tim was about to ask and stop it before it was requested. A little rude, he thought, but John did not much care for Tim after the way he had acted with Harry. "Well, "I best be leaving," said John, as he proceeded to stride off with Tim giving chase. Quickly the gap between the two increased, and with Tim trying to make sure that John should hear his last sentence before he became winded and left behind, he started to yell as best he could with a little air. "Make sure that if you get back you look me up," Tim said. "I would like to be the first to trade with you on your return. I've got some things I think you would..." He ran out of air before he could finish, as he could only stop and pant, watching as John proceeded at amazing speed into the distance in the direction of the edge. John arrived at the Wrinkles and enjoyed the feeling of knowing where he was, although so far from the commune and the safety it offered. "I love travel," he thought. He smiled to himself as he passed familiar places and remembered how it felt when here the first time. Before long he arrived at the top of the large Wrinkle. Once on top, he looked back to confirm he was in the same place. "Yes, this is it," he thought. "Now I must descend into the darkness. I wonder if Belladonna is still there, and if she will remember me." As he descended, he placed his hand on his trusty stick. Eventually, he could see the first of the sticky string. He drew his stick and started to tap the string while at the same time calling for Belladonna. The vibration was the first thing that awoke her, flashing open the eyes she could. 3 of her eyes had been permanently damaged in the last encounter with John. The excitement of the anticipation that she had was soon quelled as she heard her name. "Belladonna!" She recognized his voice instantly, and when she did, she closed all her eyes, hoping that he would go away. "Belladonna!" she heard again, slightly closer. The vibration was violent along the string. "Oh, I do hope he goes away," she thought, still with her eyes squeezed tight. John became familiar with his surroundings, and his eyes adjusted to the darkness. He approached her lair, calling as he went and holding the stick high above his head, ready to strike at the first sign or sound of her attack. Then he saw the deadly Belladonna. One leg extended lightly, holding the string that was vibrating every time John moved or struck it with the stick. "Hello, Belladonna," John said softly. Belladonna opened just one eye, but hoped she was showing no signs of movement. She could see him and remembered the bashing she received, and just hoped that it was a dream. She wondered if he had returned to finish her off, as she could see the weapon held high above his head. Now that she realized he knew exactly where she was, she readied herself for a leap backward and a hasty retreat. "How are you, Belladonna?" John asked as he lowered the stick. He could see that Belladonna was not going to attack him, and if she did, he would not need a stick to fight her off. At the lowering of the stick, Belladonna was starting to feel more at ease. She opened her other eyes that she could and looked at herself quickly in the mirror before turning towards John. One of her legs shot forward and held her needle straight, not letting it look bent in the presence of visitors. "Oh, hello. How nice of you to drop by," she said. John looked at her and felt a tinge of guilt. She obviously had not gotten over their last encounter. The damage was clear and lasting. "How are you, Belladonna?" John asked. "I thought I would just stop by and say hello as I passed." She then noticed the blanket glowing, and it clearly was the one she had made. "I must say how gallant you look in the cloak I made. You obviously like it," she said. "Belladonna, it is my most precious possession," John said. "I wear it all the time. In fact, I would not leave home without it." "Oh, I'm so pleased. It's nice to think that one's gifts are appreciated," said Belladonna. John remained silent for a second as he reflected upon how he won the blanket in mortal battle. It was not a gift, but he decided for the sake of conversation to let her get away with her comment. "Yes, it is warm and very light, wonderfully made, and many have commented on its beauty," John said. Belladonna now reflected upon the word beauty and had to ask the question. "John," she dragged out his name as sexy as she could, "as a friend, would you mind if I asked you a question?" John, sensing the change in her mood, answered, "Sure." "Do you think I'm still beautiful? Am I not the most beautiful spider you've ever seen?" she asked. She was trying hard to open the closed eyes and press firmly on the bent needle, a bit too firm as it was now bending slightly the other way. John had never considered Belladonna beautiful. In fact, he was scared to death when he first laid eyes upon her. No matter how he looked at her, she was not a thing of beauty. Her looks were enough to crack a crystal, he thought. He did not want to offend her, as he felt a little bit responsible for her current state, and also he did not want to tell a lie. He thought about it for a moment and found the answer he was looking for. You, Belladonna, are without doubt the most beautiful spider I have ever seen in all my time. This was fantastic, she thought. I am beautiful. I should never have doubted my beauty. The conversation now took on a far from sinister air. She became concerned that John was traveling by himself and was shocked when she inquired as to where he was going. All of a sudden, they were now friends. After a while, John again got the urge to continue his journey. Well, Belladonna, he said, it has been great to see you again, and I am so pleased that you're feeling so well. John was genuinely happy that Belladonna was recovered and not bitter towards him. He certainly did not wish her any harm, and it was reassuring that he now had her as a friend, someone he could travel to and spend some time with after his journey was complete. As he left, Belladonna was saddened to see him go. Wishing him well and telling him to be careful, she watched as he walked away. She felt him vibrate her other strings long after he was out of sight. Before he was completely gone, she heard him curse and call her name. Belladonna, your string has stuck to my foot again, he shouted. Would you be so kind to come and release it? She quickly scurried to where John was and removed the string that was attached with some of her cleaning fluid from the bag on her back. Here, take this with you, she said, and passed a small bottle of it to John. Now that is a real Belladonna gift, John thought, and smiled as he placed it in his bag. Chapter 8, The Other Side. As John left Belladonna, he started to climb out of the darkness. He was aware of how bright the light was getting. The higher he got, the brighter it became. At first he thought it was just that he had been in such a dark place. After reaching the peak of the wrinkle, he looked ahead and could see that the leaf was coming to an end. The edge, he thought, this is it. Excitably, but cautiously, he slowly proceeded towards his goal. The brightness was almost deafening. He squinted as his eyes adjusted. The edge, he thought. All his life he had heard rumors of the dangers, and here he was standing on the edge of his world. After a time of enjoying the feeling of success and the amazing distances he could see, he peered over the edge, looking in every direction. It was wonderful. He soon became aware that the leaf had another side. The other side was something John had not thought about, but as he did, the idea came to him that it was a new world for him to explore. If he went back now, he would have nothing to dream about. He had reached the edge, and that was it. The thought depressed him and took a bit of the shine off the success. He leaned over the edge more so he could get a better look at what was on the other side. To be honest, it was very similar to the side he had lived and traveled upon. It was obviously brighter and slightly greener. He could see nothing that appeared dangerous. The brightness reassured him, and he decided that he would proceed. Slowly, he extended his upper body over the edge. He extended until only the lower half of him was holding on to the lower leaf. His strength and health was an easy match for the next part of his planned maneuver. Almost doubling himself in two, his upper body grabbed the other side of the leaf. At this time, he released his grip of the lower leaf and then dragged himself forward until he was safely in place. Until a few moments ago, a place he never realized existed. On the other side. After a while, he started to feel more comfortable with his surroundings. He could see no boundaries and no darkness hiding dangers. Like the good explorer, he decided to proceed forward. The deep green of the leaf impressed him. The light was reflected from the leaf so that if you looked into the distance, the leaf appeared a shimmering white. It was only when you got to the place where you were looking that the leaf again appeared green. Whilst looking forward, he first noticed it. He stood and watched for a moment, his hand firmly on the sheathed stick in case he needed it to defend himself. He could see that whatever it was seemed more concerned about what was happening to itself than to his presence. It could have only been there for a short time, as the slime trail it left was still wet and visible. John looked in the direction of the trail and could see that whatever it was had come from the underleaf. The trail clearly led to the edge. Strange, he thought. I've never in all my travels come across one of these before. As he thought this, he had a strange feeling that something about this thing was becoming familiar. He continued watching. The thing was starting to change. From its body, it had large legs. These legs were now extending, and it was standing higher than it was when he first noticed it. From its side were folded wings that John watched slowly open. They were clear and wet, getting larger and more formed every moment. When they had formed their final shape, it waited for them to dry. John was mesmerized by what he was watching. The changes were strange, and it was hard for him to believe that what he was watching was actually happening. He took a moment to rub his eyes, thinking the brightness might be playing tricks on him. He returned his stare, and it confirmed what was happening as he watched. When its wings had dried, it slowly started to flap them. As it flapped, the wings started to fill with color. The more it flapped, the deeper the colors became. It was then that John realized that the colors were those of the crystal, and that somehow he had seen this creature before. Maybe not in this form, but he had seen it. When its wings were filled with the colors, it turned and looked in the direction of John. He then noticed that it also had one of its legs missing. They both engaged each other's stare, and he knew by the look that what he was looking at was Charlie. Charlie, is it you? You're so beautiful. Charlie was unable to communicate with John, but he could hear Charlie's voice in his mind, comforting and warm. Charlie, you are beautiful. I've missed you so much. The look that Charlie gave John was one that said 1,000 words. He turned and with the slightest flap of his wings lifted into the air. John watched as his dear friend climbed higher and higher. As he watched, he realized that he would never see Charlie again. John only felt happiness for his dear old friend. Epilogue. Many years passed. Ethan now stood with his daughter Bella. Both were looking down at Granddad's gravestone. The dream that had upset him so many years before had ultimately come true. The story his granddad told him was again his support. Below his granddad's name was the inscription that Ethan insisted upon including. And now you are the butterfly. Bella looked at Ethan and asked where Granddad had gone and why he had to die. Ethan, holding her tiny hand, said, "Come with me. I will show you a story." The end.